Alright guys, welcome to Formula 1 news. So much drama around the paddock over the last 24 hours or so, especially what's going on right now at Mercedes. Rumour has it they have locked in the contract. Andrea Kimi Antonelli will replace Lewis Hamilton next season, due to be announced at Monza in a couple of races' time. Hamilton is meant to ceremonially hand over to Antonelli in one of these ceremonies. But what does this mean for Max Verstappen? Has Max missed his chance if he wants to jump ship from Red Bull now to try and win a championship at a good-looking Mercedes next season? Or is that now more likely in 2026 and potentially beyond? Toto Wolff is still keen, but they're taking the opportunity off the table, it seems, for 2025. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. First of all, this came out of the blue today on another Grand Prix. Every so often we talk about, a new Grand Prix here, a new Grand Prix there. What I will say about this is, it ain't a street track, apparently. They say that it will be a permanent track in Rwanda. Guess the country. That's not the one that I'd have come up with. So, look, they obviously are looking at a return to Africa. There's talk about, obviously, Kyalami in South Africa as a potential Grand Prix, but getting it like grade 1 listed or whatever it's got to be to become a Formula 1 circuit, and some of the other complications right now in South Africa, that seems less likely. So Rwanda, country in East Africa, it's been in the news a fair bit, certainly in the UK after the stint that the Conservative government tried to pull there, basically. But as Domenicali says, we need to have the right investment and strategic plan. So Domenicali, living up to his nickname as always. Obviously, it's all about the money, isn't it? And but he does say Rwanda are serious. So there's a rumour that Rwanda are going to be talking with Liberty Media and Formula 1 in the next couple of weeks to see if they can get a Grand Prix. Whether it happens, I don't know. There's interest all around the world right now, seemingly also from Rwanda, and just, we're cool to go to Africa. And look, to be honest, I know there's complications and queries and concerns about this, and for good reason, but if it's not a street track, I'm actually kind of down, let's, every circuit that is proposed that isn't a street circuit, I'm down to keep it moving. If it's a street track, okay, chalk it up completely. The other thing that Domenicali is talking about here is the sprint races and reverse grids, because he's talked about sprint races for a long time. He even mentioned that, because of what MotoGP has done, whether more sprint races the better. He now says maybe a third of the calendar will have sprint races, so moving it to 8 rather than, I think it's still staying at 6, I'm pretty sure, for next season. Now they're 24. They're probably going to push that to 8 at some point. I still don't like them. I think they're better now than they were because Parc Fermé reopens, so it's not completely just leaking what's going to happen in the race, it's basically a mini race, and therefore, because the cars are the same, it just tells you what's going to happen on Sunday. Now that's not so true anymore with the way that they've made the changes in recent rounds. But then again, the sprint is kind of deprioritized because quali happens after the sprint, so who really cares? So I don't really know what their solution is going to be to this one. But he did mention the possibility of doing reverse grids for the sprint, which most Formula 1 fans would probably say feels a bit fake, feels a bit artificial, but I don't know, they might be going for it. They do it in Formula 2, but they just reverse the top 10 drivers. So, there's no incentive to qualify last, right? Because then if you're last, you're last. But if you are 10th, then you end up first. If you're first, you end up 10th. That's the way that I do it in Formula 2, but I don't really think that belongs in Formula 1, but Domenicali isn't ruling it out. The other big story on the day is on Christian Horner and Red Bull. This has been continuing in the background for some time because the employee that accused team boss Christian Horner of this controlling and inappropriate behavior had an appeal. She then had it denied. She then had it reappealed effectively with, different external investigators, different lawyers, and it's been denied again. So, look, you can talk about this all day, the pros, the cons, what actually happened behind the scenes, what the true solution of the situation should be, whether Horner's getting protected unnecessarily, so whether those WhatsApp messages were even real, although, he didn't deny that they were real, but whatever, you can look at it either way on that. But as we see here, a couple of statements coming through, especially this one, as Andrew Benson points out, that the complainant, or the appeal lodged by the complainant, has not been upheld, and that's what we see here. The internal process is concluded. The employee in question was actually suspended earlier this year from her duties, and it was deemed to be, I think she she was a personal assistant of Horner and potential personal assistant of, I think it was Newey as well, was the rumor anyway, that she was like assisting both of those guys, and therefore that potentially was one of the reasons why Newey wanted out, was because of that relationship. I don't know, there's been so many rumors and speculation over the last few months, it's impossible to say what's actually true or not. What is true though is the Horner ain't going anywhere, and look, we've known this now for a long time, but it's still been confirmed today. That employee who was suspended back in March has the second round has been concluded. It's possible that it still could go to like the employee tribunal or something. Like, we might not have heard the last of this. It still could go further to court possibly, but it's definitely an interesting time, right? And with all this going on, we've still got Newey leaving, we've still got Jonathan Wheatley leaving, and Giuliano De Kessa and Formula Uno are raising the question, is this just reorganisation from Red Bull, or was Jos Verstappen right that keeping Horner has resulted in the meltdown and destabilisation of this team? I think the latter is probably slightly more likely than the former, and it's contributed to at least some degree as to why Max Verstappen to another team is a genuine conversation, which did not seem likely the way that the season began. A couple of things on Williams. They actually said today, or at least there are rumours about it, that they've started on their 2025 car a long time ago now, Williams. They were effectively giving up on this year, and it's all about next year and certainly 2026 and beyond as well. Even James Vowles said that basically the entire factory was absolutely buzzing when they unveiled that Sainz to be joining, and I think that's going to be a pretty fascinating pairing to watch next season, Sainz and Albon. Another fascinating pairing, though, absolutely, is going to be George Russell and Andrea Kimi Antonelli, because as it currently looks like, they might be, with the trajectory of that car, a championship contending team next season. This year, it would be possible if the season started 7 rounds ago. But unfortunately for Mercedes, their first 7, 8 races were pretty terrible. And now they've turned it around recently. It's kind of too little, too late for either Hamilton or Mercedes in general to actually put together a title fight. But next season, if it starts the way that this season currently looks like, it's possible that Mercedes could be in a title fight. So you need a driver capable of winning a championship. And is Russell that guy? Well, there's questions on that. Hamilton is that guy, but he's leaving for Ferrari. So this is the question on whether it's worthwhile or whether it's wise to put a rookie straight into a front-running car. This happens very rarely indeed. Obviously, it happened with Hamilton for McLaren back in 2007, and they were not convinced it was a good idea either. But his GP2 campaign, as it was back then, was so good that they really, they had to respect it. And also back then, Hamilton, as the drivers could do, had more testing, more laps, more time basically in a Formula 1 car than the drivers and the rookies get today. Then again, it's not like Antonelli has not been in the car at all. He's been driving plenty of Mercedes over the last few months at Imola and other circuits, getting some testing mileage in, and I think it's quite clear that he's impressed the people that matter. To such an extent that they're willing, it seems, to pull the trigger on this, because Sergio Rodriguez says, want some flags, Italian flag, German flag, Italian driver, German manufacturer, and he then goes on to say Monza will be an interesting weekend, quote tweeting his own tweet back from June when he said Antonelli to Mercedes is 95%. But still, that's 2 months ago. They've waited their time, it seems, Mercedes, probably because there might have been another driver on the radar as well, and we'll get into what it means for him here in a second. But reportedly, this is now a done deal, and Antonelli is going to be joining. There's so much debate. I think the Formula 1 community is very split on this. I will say after Silverstone and, the Formula 2 race that Antonelli had there, and after the last couple of rounds of F2, I think people that watched have been more convinced that actually, what people say about Antonelli probably has some truth behind it, right? Like, this guy's been considered a prodigy. He's been considered the driver that Mercedes do not want to lose at all costs. Even on some level, there was discussion that the reason why Hamilton is gone is because they wanted to ensure that Antonelli had a drive at some point. Of course, there was talk that Antonelli, and therefore they wouldn't give Hamilton the extension that he wanted, the 2+1, they'd only give him the 1+1, and as a result, Hamilton decided, right, that's not for me, I'm going to go to Ferrari instead. So Antonelli's been in the pipeline for a while. The general theory goes, well, send him to Williams for a year or two, then take him to Mercedes. And that seems likely if Mercedes were a championship contender. When they all of a sudden weren't and they had a terrible start to the year, it now made more sense to put Antonelli in the car. But now all of a sudden, they've won 3 of the last 4 races. So is it sensible to put Antonelli in the car? Who knows? The reality is, this is my opinion. If he's good enough, he's good enough. You know, like, it's either sink or swim. And if he sinks, then he sinks. Like, whatever. Mercedes didn't owe him anything anyway. If he swims, then, well, they have a real talent on their hands. Is he going to be able to replicate anything like what Hamilton did back in 2007? I mean, man, I'm excited to see it. I think it's just really exciting for the sport, actually. At 70, I mean, he'll be 18 years old when he's in the car next season. Rookie with Mercedes alongside Russell, who's a very fast driver. Maybe doesn't quite have the race pace and, you know, some of the other kind of, maybe even racecraft at times. Some of the other factors that Russell's missing a little bit on Hamilton, but, you know, Mr. Saturday, there's no denying that. And I think Russell is probably better than he gets credit for, personally, especially the way that he's performed against Hamilton over the last couple of seasons. But Antonelli, as a rookie coming in to replace Hamilton, you know, he's going to make mistakes. And it's not like his Formula 2 campaign has been great this year, but you've got to look at the bigger picture. Antonelli has basically dominated every single championship that he's raced in since the start of his career. And this year, he's racing a Prema who don't really have a good grasp on this set of regulations. And, well, the brand new Formula 2 cars, not really regulations, but you know what I mean. They brought in brand new Formula 2 cars this year. Prema have struggled with it. Behrman is floundering. He's nowhere. And Behrman's in the Haas next year after very much impressing in Jeddah for Ferrari. So Antonelli is comprehensively outperforming Behrman this year. In his first year in Formula 2, it's Behrman's second year in Formula 2. Behrman also considered one of the most promising talents in the sport. So I think this is just why there's so much optimism around Antonelli, and Autosprint and others are now reporting that, yeah, this is apparently a done deal. Rumour has it the contract is a 2+1 deal. So that's 25, 26, and then who knows after that. There's also an interesting, apparently, a symbolic mini handover ceremony is expected between Hamilton and Antonelli in Imola, which, as I say, will be quite interesting if this is true for Hamilton, just because, as I say, Hamilton in some sense is not losing his seat, because if he wanted to stay, he could have stayed. But he wouldn't have been able to stay on the terms that he wanted, and therefore he went to Ferrari. But the fact that Antonelli existed and Hamilton was in Mercedes directors' board's minds was kind of towards the end of his career, there's a feeling that Mercedes effectively made the decision to not commit longer term to Hamilton despite everything that he's done for them, because they don't want to risk losing protege Antonelli in the same way that they lost Verstappen, because they couldn't give him a seat, whereas Helmut Marko could a few years ago when Verstappen was first coming into the sport. So this was the debate way back, I think this was in February, when the announcement was happening over the Hamilton stuff, and Antonelli therefore was in the conversation immediately, and now over the last couple of months this has basically become true. The question therefore to me is, what happens on the Max Verstappen side? Because Max is clearly not the happiest bunny at Red Bull right now. There are problems in that team. The car is regressing. He's probably still going to win the championship. But is Verstappen looking at next year and thinking, well, I'm going to win next year as well? Probably not. I mean, I'm sure he's confident that he will. But the way things currently look, like if this season we are currently seeing happens next year, as it stands right now, the way that McLaren, with the way that Mercedes are, is Max the title favourite? Probably not, to be honest. He may still be, just because he's got a teammate that doesn't take any points off him, and he's able to maximise his weekends in a way better than what Lando Norris, it seems, presently can. But still, Verstappen's been comprehensively outscored by Piastri, Hamilton, for example, over the last few races. Now, Toto Wolff, again, is talking about Max. This is back in July, Max made an interesting comment when he was asked the question, are you committed to Red Bull? And Max said, yeah, well, sure, like I've got a contract and I'm going to stick to the contract or whatever. But he didn't categorically deny the possibility of departing. And then Toto says, yeah, Max is still on the radar for me, still the strongest driver. The door's always left open for him. That's why we left the door open for him. But it seems like now is the time where they've decided, okay, Antonelli has shown us enough, either in Formula 2 or in testing that he's done with Mercedes, to commit to him, and there must be a feeling from Mercedes and from Toto that, okay, Max isn't going to leave, and therefore let's get this Antonelli deal done right about now. But what if Max changes his mind, or is it now just too late, right? Like, if Max actually knocks on the door of Toto Wolff's office tomorrow and says, hey, I want to drive for Mercedes, like, what does Toto do? Is there a way to, like, say, oh, sorry, Kimi, like, we did say that if Max comes along, you're not getting the drive, you're going to be our reserve or something? Or, which is more likely, that isn't happening, right? And Max, if he is a possibility, will probably arrive maybe for next year. This is what's interesting, though, is that there's further rumours today that the Verstappen clan they're not yet sold on the whole Mercedes thing. Yes, they've made good progress lately, but it's only been a few races. So apparently, the Verstappen clan wants to observe Mercedes' upward curve, particularly in 2025, and then compare their performance and trend with Red Bull. If Red Bull stagnates or falls and Mercedes continues to evolve, the decision will already be made. And especially for 2026, where there is a feeling that Mercedes will have a stronger power unit than Red Bull will. So this is the current rumour that Verstappen is pretty stable, that he's going to stay at Red Bull until at least these end of the cycle of regulations, and for 2025 it ain't going to happen. That's the decision that they've made, and therefore Toto says, okay, that's fine, let's get Antonelli in. However, if Mercedes do well next year, certainly in the hands of Russell and Antonelli, as it seems right now, and of course, on the other side of things, Red Bull don't do so well, maybe Verstappen doesn't even win next year's championship, then the decision, as they say, will be made, and he's going to be joining Mercedes in 2026. Well, he will want to join Mercedes, and Mercedes, it seems in Toto Wolff, are not going to say no to him joining Mercedes. But of course, there are only 2 seats, right, in that car, and that's why next year is so fascinating to me, because this Verstappen-Mercedes thing, the way that the season is currently going, you cannot rule it out for 2026. You can probably rule it out for 2025, but for 2026 you cannot rule out Verstappen to Mercedes, but there's only 2 seats, and one of which Russell has, one of which Antonelli has. So what do you do? Do Mercedes see Russell as a man who can lead them to a championship? They say they do, but given how much they've been, getting down on their hands and knees for Max Verstappen to join the team, you got to think that they're not fully confident that Russell is the man to get the job done. So what if Antonelli has a really good rookie season next year and does a Hamilton in 2007 and against Alonso? Now, Russell's maybe no Alonso, but let's say Antonelli is close, in the ballpark of Russell, and Verstappen comes knocking. If you're Toto, at that point, do you sack off Russell, right? That's what Russell's fighting for next season in some way. He has to comprehensively outperform Antonelli, and therefore, to make the decision difficult. Because if Antonelli does very well compared to Russell next year, then if Max comes knocking on the door, it's Russell who's going to go, rather than the rookie, right? That's how it's going to be. So, and it would be incredible for Toto if he's able to get the 2 prodigies that he wanted, one of which being Max, who left and now might come back, one of which Antonelli, who's, he's managed to maintain in the car. That would be quite something, right? Of course, the other possibility is the whole Verstappen-Aston Martin thing, certainly as a result of the rumours over as they described, the riots at Red Bull, the departures of Newey and Wheatley can't clearly please Max or his father, Jos. So there's talk about, Newey's going over to Aston Martin. That is the current rumour. We have the Honda engine that's going over to Aston Martin. That is not even a rumour, that is guaranteed. So, and Aston Martin and Lawrence Stroll are apparently going to do whatever it takes to get Max. So 2026 will be very interesting. My feeling is that I don't see Max joining Aston Martin in 2026 because it's just a bit of a question mark, right? I think he could join Mercedes though in 2026, and that raises some serious questions. So very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Just a couple of final things. Ricciardo got number 15 in the mid-season driver rankings. Pierre Gasly gets number 14. So, I think this is maybe about right, really. Gasly's not had a great season, but I think he's been impressive compared to Ocon since the cars are apparently the same. The rumour has it that at the start of the season, the cars weren't even the same weight or whatever, and now that they've got a similar one, he's been pretty much there or thereabouts with Ocon, maybe better at some races, maybe worse at some others, but it's a competitive driver pairing on and off the track. And 13 goes to Yuki Tsunoda, who started the season so well, regressed somewhat, but still in a good place, and on this list at least, above Daniel Ricciardo in 15th, and that's what you got to do, right? Just be better than your teammate, and you maximise your chances of getting a promotion, but it seems like that ship has probably sailed for Yuki Tsunoda. So very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.